ADR. Promoting dialogue.
It is 6 p.m. in Dakar. Good evening and welcome to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and worldwide at WATR.org. Here are the top stories. Burkina Faso said to receive $250 million in funding to strengthen the country's healthcare sector fight against disease. Senegal's Ministry of Energy highlights an increase in oil production totaling 2.29 million barrels in August. Côte d'Ivoire's Constitutional Council faces criticism over the validated list of candidates ahead of the October 25 election.
They rarely see that those mentioned right here, they carry weight. That's why they excluded them from the electoral list.
Women can do just as much. A woman can also be president.
Against Alassane Ouattara, no chance.
And in Nigeria, the National Union of Petroleum Workers vows to continue industrial action following stalled negotiations with government. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
My name is Sankule Janko. Many thanks for joining us. Burkina Faso is set to receive significant financial assistance from the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria. Over the 2024-25 period, the nation will benefit from nearly $250 million, approximately 137 billion CFA francs. The funding aims to bolster its health system, enhance infrastructure and widen access to essential medical care. Christopher Aticho has the details.
During a meeting between Maria Kirova, head of the Global Fund's High Impact Countries Division, and Dr. Abubakar Nakanabo, Burkina Faso's Minister of Economy and Finance, the focus was placed on aligning these resources with national frameworks and increasing domestic financing for health initiatives. The minister highlighted that Burkina Faso already allocates 12% of its national budget to healthcare and close to 40% to social intervention. However, persistent challenges remain. Certain regions grapple with severe infrastructure gaps, inadequately equipped hospitals, and a shortage of skilled medical personnel. Insecurity has also forced the closure of numerous health facilities, undermining access to basic medical services for countless individuals, especially those in rural areas. In response, the Presidential Health Initiative launched in 2024 is aimed at creating long-term improvements within the Burkinabe health system. The funding provided through the Global Fund extends well beyond combating AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria. It presents an opportunity to broaden health coverage and elevate the standard of healthcare across the Sahelian country.
Christopher Atichu with that report. In Senegal, authorities welcome oil development. The Senegalese Minister of Energy highlights an increase in oil production. Senegal produced 2.9 million barrels of oil during the month of August. Oil production will increase from 30 million barrels to 34 million, according to the Ministry of Energy. Augustine Coley has more in the following report.
According to the Minister of Energy, oil production, which would double this year by 2025, will not only meet domestic needs, but also position Senegal on the regional market. With its hydrocarbons, Senegal expects GDP growth of 8.4%, according to the IMF. Minister Biram Souleye Diop indicated that oil production is 100,000 barrels per day at the Sangoma field, operated by the Australian company Woodside. Since joining the ranks of oil-producing countries in June 2024, Senegal has been hoping for increasingly high production. Figures provided by Petrosian predict $1 billion in profit by 2030.
Augustine Coley filed that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
And now to politics. Côte d'Ivoire's highest judicial body, the Constitutional Council, has validated the final list of candidates for the October 2025 presidential election. Out of 60 applicants submitted to the Electoral Commission, only 5 were selected, including incumbent President Alassane Ouattara. However, applications from former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo and Tidjane Cham, representing the main opposition party PDCI, were disqualified. As Abdullahi Hassan reports, the announcement was made by the President of the Council, Chantal Nanaba Kamara.
The disqualification of several opposition leaders, including former President Laurent Gbagbo, continues to spark discussions across the streets of Abidjan. Here are some reactions from ordinary Ivorians regarding this announcement.
They rarely see that those mentioned right here, they carry weight. That's why they excluded them from the electoral list.
It can be adjusted because this is not a democracy. It's more of a dictatorship.
Out of the 5 selected candidates, 2 are women, Simone Gbagbo and former Minister Henriette Lago. While feminists appreciate the inclusion of these 2 women in the presidential race, they recognize that neither one of them carries significant influence in the political arena.
Women can do just as much. When there is a boy who is president, a woman can also be president.
Against Alassane Ouattara, no chance. Maybe not, it's just makeup. Otherwise, no chance. One must even somewhat deceive oneself. If she has been selected, she might get a few votes. It's not to pluck the presidential seat reserved for men once again. She might get a few votes to please the female audience.
3 candidates are running for the presidency for the first time: Aoua Don Melo, Jean-Louis Bion, and Simone Gbagbo. As a reminder, the presidential election campaign will commence on October 10, with the polls scheduled for October 25, 2025.
A report from WDR's Abidjan correspondent Marcel Ariston-Blay, voiced by Abdullahi Hassan. In Mali, the resurgence of terrorism in the Kay region, located in the northern region of the country, is hindering smooth administrative and economic activities. Jenim, an Al-Qaeda affiliate group operating in the area, has erected a blockade on the main roads leading to the city. Recent reports confirmed the interception and destruction of several trucks by armed men on the route. The trucks were conveying goods to Bamako. Despite the growing threat, the Malian army reassured the population of proactive measures to address the situation. In Ghana, hundreds of retail shops, mostly belonging to Nigerians, at the popular Abosi Okai Spare Parts Market have been shut down by a task force of the Spare Parts Dealers Association. The Abosi Okai Spare Parts Association's Director of Communications, Taki Ado, explained that the closures were prompted by violation of the country's retail laws, which reserve retail and petty trading exclusively for Ghanaian citizens. However, the Nigerian Traders Association is expressing concerns about the impact of the move on trade relations, urging their Ghanaian counterparts to exercise caution in enforcing the law. From Accra, now the detailed reports.
The Abosokai Spare Parts Dealers Association says the crackdown stems from violations of Ghana's investment laws, which reserve retail and petty trading exclusively to citizens. The move, they explained, is intended to enforce compliance and protect local businesses that have long complained of unfair competition. Under the Ghana Investment Promotion Act, Act 865, retail trade is strictly reserved for Ghanaians, but traders insist enforcement has been weak. Others accused the Ghana Revenue Authority, GRA, of harassment, saying Ghanaian traders are hounded over taxes while foreigners operate with little restriction. Director of Communications for the Abosokai Spare Parts Dealers Association, Techi Ado, announced at a press briefing that foreign traders in the enclave have been given a 3-day ultimatum to vacate their shops or face a total enforcement of the law. Meanwhile, the Nigerian Traders Association, NUTA, has expressed concern about the development, warning that the crackdown could strain relations between the two countries. The latest closures revive long-standing tensions over Ghana's retail laws, which have repeatedly sparked clashes between local traders and foreign nationals in recent years. For WADR, Nadi Tete, Accra.
In Liberia, a recent audit report from the General Auditing Commission, GAC, has exposed over $2.8 million in unsupported payments made by the Ministry of Finance. The findings highlight a severe absence of crucial documentation such as payment receipts, vendor quotations, formal contracts, expenditure reports, and delivery notes. This disclosure has sparked widespread public anger and demands for accountability, bringing attention to pressing concerns surrounding financial governance. Abraham Parker completes the story.
According to the audit report, the absence of missing documentation makes it impossible to verify the legitimacy and the purpose of certain expenditures, raising concerns about potential fraud or corruption. The situation is further complicated by the fact that 11 state-owned enterprises failed to meet their income tax obligations for 2024. These entities were expected to remit 10.16 million, but only 5.6 million was actually paid, resulting in a shortfall that could negatively impact government revenue and public services. In response to the GAC report, Finance Minister Augustine Gaffon stated that the majority of the discrepancies occurred before his tenure and urged the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission to conduct a thorough investigation.
Auditors don't come to say you have stolen. They come and find system weaknesses that you need to work on. But in this environment of gullibility, where people project negativity on people, when they see audit report, they conclude. NCC, please investigate this for this country. I beg the NCC to investigate.
Despite this, public discontent is rising. Opposition figures and concerned citizens, including former Deputy Minister for Development and Planning Benente Koluba, are voicing strong criticism regarding the alleged financial mismanagement.
The foundation of the government was built on elucifies the complex problem to appear very simple that it will be addressed within a twinkle of an eye. Then the reality sets in now. With that flawed foundation, the whole payroll was flawed. From the Ministry of Finance, I can say the most dangerous entity in this regime is not the police, it is the CSA. The danger we are playing with in this country.
It remains to be seen whether the government will initiate a formal investigation and prosecute those responsible for the alleged irregularities. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar and around the world on WADR.org and on Earthsat at 16.8 on the frequency of 102.687 MHz. Burkina Faso said to receive $250 million in funding to strengthen the country's health sector on fight against disease. Senegal's Ministry of Energy highlights an increase in oil production totaling 2.9 million barrels in August. Côte d'Ivoire's Constitutional Council faces criticism over the validated list of candidates ahead of October 2025 election. Still ahead in the news, in Nigeria, the National Union of Petroleum Workers vows to continue industrial action following stalled negotiations with the government. We do have press review, guest interview, and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Now to some health news here on the news. Clinical trials for a potential Lassa fever vaccine are currently underway in Ghana, Nigeria, and Liberia. This was disclosed by Dr. Henshaw Mandi, a consultant to the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovation, CEPI, at the second ECOWAS Lassa Fever International Conference, ELFCI, FIC 2025, taking place in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. The initiative is part of global efforts to address one of the region's ongoing public health challenges. Several scientists, policymakers, and development partners are gathering in the Ivorian capital to share research findings and develop collaborative strategies to combat Lassa fever in West Africa. More held, a 7-day warning strike by resident doctors in Nigeria's capital city, Abuja, entered its second day this Tuesday, September 9, 2025. The doctors accused the FCT administration of neglecting critical issues in the healthcare sector, including poor working conditions and inadequate resources. Patients and their families are voicing concerns over limited access to medical care, urging the government to take immediate action to resolve the crisis. WDR's Usman Omar has the details.
The doctors are protesting what they describe as long-standing failures in the territory's health system, including poor staffing, unpaid salaries, and unsafe working conditions. Their president, Dr. George Ebong, told journalists that the decision followed an emergency meeting after months of fruitless discussions with the FCT administration.
They have refused to employ, they have refused to pay, they have refused to promote, they have refused to skip, they have refused to convert our fellow colleagues who have passed their part 2. They've refused to pay the 13-month allowance arrears. We are getting demoralized now. We can't continue to work in this pattern.
We expected that government should call us to negotiation table, at least to look into what we have been asking and clamoring for. But unfortunately, governments seem not to listen to us.
The doctors say there has been no fresh recruitment into the FCT hospitals since 2011, leaving them overstretched and vulnerable. They cite cases of medical staff collapsing from exhaustion and even a nurse who died from a snake bite at Abaji General Hospital. Patients and their relatives, worried about access to care, are appealing to the government to step in quickly.
The government should do something about it. Take care of the doctor who has been working day and night, making sure that life is brought back to the right position.
We are the ones suffering, because we don't have money to go to the private hospital. And if we come here, if we cannot see doctors here, where do we go to? We go home and sit, and we are sick, So I think the government should listen to whatever the doctors are saying and whatever it is they want and sort it out with them.
The association is demanding that the FCT minister declare a state of emergency in all 14 district and general hospitals across the capital. It warns that if nothing changes after the warning strike, the action could escalate into an indefinite shutdown. Meanwhile, Minister of State for Health, Dr. Isaac Shalako, says talks are ongoing with the National Association of Resident Doctors, expressing confidence that the dispute can be resolved before it degenerates further. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar reporting from Abuja.
Well, staying in Nigeria, the National Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG, has vowed to continue its strike after the collapse of the conciliation meeting organized by the Minister of Labour, Muhammad Dingyadi, to settle the crisis between the union and the Dangote refinery on Monday. The meeting ended in a stalemate as both parties disagreed on the unionization of tanker drivers at the Dangote refinery. The strike entered its second day today. Well, Imo Eden has the details in this report.
The Nigeria Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG, plays a critical role in the country's economy. The strike, which began on Monday, September 8, in protest against what it described as anti-union practices by the Dangote Petroleum Refinery. At the heart of the dispute is the refinery's decision to deploy 4,000 new compressed natural gas trucks for direct distribution of fuel while allegedly asking drivers to shun union membership. This raises questions about workers' rights, monopoly fears, and the changing balance of power in the country's petroleum industry. NUPENG President Williams Akoreha, who spoke to local media on Tuesday, said the union had no choice but to press on with industrial action after Dangote's management rejected recognized oil and gas unions and allegedly claimed to have a separate association for its workers.
You cannot take us back to the dark days of slavery. Nigerians has wished him so well than to enslave them. So it's unfortunate that at this point in time, we're having an investor whose main purpose is to say there can't be union in his establishment. He wants to monopolize the entire system and even monopolize workers alongside with them. This we said no, and it can't happen during our time.
The Nigeria Labour Congress, for its part, is backing NUPENG. The Labour leadership alleged that the Dangote refinery created an alternative drivers association to weaken NUPENG, describing the move as illegal. Benson Upa is the acting Secretary General of the NLC.
The representative of the Dangote refinery worked out on the Honorable Minister and organized labor. Even when we bent backward to accommodate his uncompromising behavior. He still did what he had to do. So we are left with no option than to do the needful. The action continues. Whenever the representative of the Dangote refinery, when he sees the need for a meaningful dialogue, why not? We are ready.
However, not everyone is in support of this strike, especially truck drivers in Nigeria, under the umbrella of Direct Trucking Company Drivers Association, that the strike is uncalled for in a deregulated downstream sector and contradicts freedom of association enshrined in Nigeria's 1999 constitution. Silvanus Idonwekai is a unit chairman of the Drivers Association.
Formally, NUPEC is only pay salary. They don't have salary scheme. They don't have salary scheme for drivers. It is the owners who pay salary to the drivers. They are all in the purview of owner. Or what they do, their own is just the drivers are my member. They don't have any other benefit they achieve from there. So since I have gotten a lot of benefits here, I decided to join because if you look at the benefit, I think me and my family will survive.
While fuel scarcity looms across the country, some Nigerians also voice their concerns.
But it's not supposed to be. What about all this depot that they have already built? How many billions? So definitely you want to render them useless.
Dangote wants to create a monopoly. And monopolies tend to stifle and strangulate other businesses from growing. People have invested a lot of money because if only Dangote keeps loading at his gantry, other depots will be rendered redundant.
WADR requested for comment from Dangote Refinery, but there was no response. For now, Nigeria's government has, however, called on NUPENG to reconsider its decision and return to the negotiation table.
Imo added with that report.
Politics,
analysis on major news,
social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
In this segment, we return to our story from Côte d'Ivoire, where the Constitutional Council has cleared just 5 contenders for next month's presidential election, leaving out some of the country's most prominent political figures, including former President Laurent Gbagbo and Tidjane Cham. With tensions high and questions over inclusivity and democratic credibility, we turn now to Augustine Eiber, Wademon's liaison officer to ECOWAS, to help us unpack what these developments mean for Côte d'Ivoire's political future.
Ms. Austin, thank you very much for your time. Well, the much-awaited finalist for the Ivorian election is out. 5 candidates have so far been selected. From a governance perspective, what does the exclusion of major opposition figures like Laurent Gbagbo and Tidjane Cham mean for the credibility and inclusiveness of Côte d'Ivoire's electoral process?
Thank you very much for having me. Part of the challenge in Africa politics, particularly what we are now seeing in West Africa, is a deliberate attempt for ruling party to exclude major opponents they think will give them a good fight. So what you are saying in Côte d'Ivoire is not an exception, and it's not too good for our electoral landscape, our governance architecture, and from a governance perspective, it does not send a good note to the electorate that everyone has a right to participate in the electoral process. However, if exclusion is based on good note, for instance, unable to meet the threshold to contest election, that is understandable. But when it is a deliberate attempt to, like the case of Laurent Gbagbo, it is clear that Laurent Gbagbo is beginning to be very popular in the country, and Alassane Ouattara does not want that level of popularity to compete with him, and the best thing is to take him out. The use of the electoral management body to exclude Laurent Gbagbo is intentional, and that makes him a bit sad from a governor perspective. However, I think that what Laurent Gbagbo needs to do is to organize around a candidate, just like we saw in Senegal when Sonko was in prison, and then Faye had to pull up, and Sonko's support went to Faye, and today Senegal is, will I say, on a good hand or on a good trajectory? Well, history will tell.
Very well. Well, how might the Constitutional Council's decision to accept only 5 out of 60 applications affect public trust in democratic institutions in a country like Cote d'Ivoire?
Well, the Constitutional Council have the responsibility to do the needful because it is the Constitutional Council. So probably it's to review the reason why 55 were excluded or removed from the candidacy list. But however, it does impact strongly on trust, public trust, because a lot of those who follow Laurent Gbagbo and of course the other candidates, the other 64, whether you call them low support or minimum support, they are citizens of the country, and it does have an implication. So at the end of the day, whoever emerges as winner, if Alassane Ouattara returns, it is going to be read as if the Constitutional Council, did work with Alassane Ouattara to deliberately exclude anyone who could possibly win the election. Like I said, Laurent Gbagbo does have a very huge support, the same way with the other candidates in the race. However, the Constitutional Court, like what Senegal did, I can't just stop talking about Senegal, because Senegal Constitutional Council did a fantastic job, and they had to stop a Cuban president at that time from trying to postpone the election. And today's history that Senegal is back on track because the Constitutional Council stood on the side of law and not on the side of political participation. And it is important that the Ivorian Constitutional Council does follow the line and pathways of the Senegalese that stopped Macky Sall from extending his tenure by no matter how many months he intended to extend it up to. But the Constitutional Court played a huge role. And congratulations to the Senegalese Constitutional Court. And I think that the Ivorian Court should do the same and follow. And also we can talk about them on good notes.
Well, Austin Eba is Wadr Most Lessons Officer to ECOWAS. Well, in sports news, just moments before we come into the studio, interesting results cause Senegal is one step closer to securing a World Cup qualification to US, Mexico and Canada following a hard-fought 3-2 win against DRC. The Teranga Lions come from behind, to win 3-2. Mind you, DRC led 2-0 before the Senegalese equalized, of course. Pape Matar Sarr, the Tottenham Hotspur midfielder, scored the winner for the Senegalese side. It couldn't be said of the same for Nigeria because their chances of qualification are getting slimmer and slimmer following a 1-1 draw against South Africa in Johannesburg. The Super Eagles' fate is no more in their hand, regardless of what happened in the last two games of the qualifiers. Even if Nigeria wins their remaining games, it means, they'll have to rely heavily on the other fixtures and pray for a miracle. Well, these are today's fixtures results for today in the World Cup qualifiers in the African continent involving West African countries. Sierra Leone were 2-0 winners against Ethiopia. DR Congo, like I said, were beaten by the Senegalese Teranga Lions 3-2. Burkina Faso were held to a goalless draw against Egypt. Meanwhile, Togo beat Sudan 1-0. South Africa, like I said, were held 1-1 against Nigeria. And Rwanda beat Zimbabwe 1-0. Later this evening, Mauritania will take on Sudan and the Gambia will take on Burundi at 7 p.m. Well, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek. Many thanks to Faluso and Ismaila Kamara for the technical assistance. Do interact with us via our social media platforms, X and Instagram at WADR English, and on Facebook, WADR English Service. I am Sankule Janko. Good evening.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, Newmi FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM,
Riverside County. Wakata FM Radio, Banga, Liberia. Radio Gulf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone in Nigeria and Love 104.5 FM Abuja.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi, Ghana, we say a big thank you. Remember, West Africa Democracy Radio is all about you, your views, and your opinions.